gateway.
Oppose me, and you'll be killed.
Shouldn't I be free to choose?
Round 1. Fight!
I'm sure you've heard this many times, but 2023 has been an amazing year for fighting games. We already got Street Fighter 6. EVO was bigger than ever. We've constantly been getting updates on Tekken 8, and now we have a whole new Mortal Kombat game with Mortal Kombat 1. And not only that, a reboot of the timeline, whilst also kind of being a celebration of the franchise. And I'm just gonna say, Mortal Kombat 1 just further proves that fighting games are sure in a new boom period. And I haven't decided on this yet, but Mortal Kombat 1 might become my favorite Mortal Kombat game. But let's talk about it. Hi guys, DPX here reviewing today Mortal Kombat 1. Now before we get started, you know what to do. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell, leave a comment, or I will perform a fatality on you. Starting off with the good, this straight up feels like Mortal Kombat. It's a nice blend between NetherRealm's games and the classic Mortal Kombat, minus the usual NetherRealm stiffness. The game mostly feels smooth and tight. Additionally, this game looks amazing. Might actually be one of the best looking fighting games and even one of the best looking games of this year. Also, since it's a fighting game, perhaps the most important thing is the roster. Now I'm going to be honest, when Mortal Kombat 1 was first announced as a reboot, I did get a little worried that the roster was going to be lacking a little bit. Thank God I was wrong though. Mortal Kombat 1 taking all the playable characters and cameos, this has to be the most stacked Mortal Kombat game. There are many characters throughout all of Mortal Kombat. Obviously, there's Scorpion and Sub-Zero, along with other mainstays like Johnny Cage, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, Raiden, Katana, etc. There are other fan favorites like Mileena, Baraka, Smoke, Rain, Reptile, and Sindel. We got some characters who it feels like we get in every other game like Tanya, Kenshi, and Shang Tsung, amongst others. Where the roster I feel really shines is how it brings back many characters from the 3D games. I want to be real with all of you. The 3D Mortal Kombat games all kind of blend together for me, and I never played them nearly as much as the 2D games. But those games did introduce some really cool characters that we just rarely ever see. Mortal Kombat 1 takes many characters from the 3D games. Characters like Havoc, Reiko, Ashura, Natara, and Li Mei, and even throwing in an NRS character with Garrus, and a new take on Shao Kahn with General Shao. I know I weirdly just named every single character in the game pretty much, but the point I'm trying to make is that this roster is the kind of roster where if you're a Mortal Kombat fan, there is somebody here for you. And sure, there really aren't any newcomers in this game, but because this is a reboot, many characters have some really cool changes. Characters like Liu Kang, sure we've seen him as Fire God before, but as the default version of this character, this is a new take on him. Even someone like Reptile, who I main by the way, where it feels like for previous games they couldn't decide whether they want him to be a human or a lizard, they decided that he could be a human that could transform into a lizard. And the way in which he does that in this game is so cool. Like I said, there's a character for any Mortal Kombat fan, but then you throw in the cameos. This is basically an assist feature that is the big new gameplay addition to Mortal Kombat 1, and I will say, this is a very solid way to include characters who just don't quite make sense to be playable, or there just is no room for them. Sure, Sonya, Kano, and Jax might be mainstays on the playable roster, but I honestly feel like having them as cameos is a nice consolation prize. And I love the details with them. They could have just stopped with having the player press a button and the cameo comes out and does a move, but no, they have full-on fatalities. I also feel like you can't talk about Mortal Kombat, at least the newer games, without talking about the story mode. Once again, NetherRealm nails it with the story. Since Mortal Kombat 1 is a reboot of the series, the story does some interesting things. Like I said, Liu Kang, he's now just the God of Fire and kind of controls the story. Raiden went from being the God of Thunder to being just some rising up and coming fighter. Scorpion and Sub-Zero are now brothers. Katana and Mileena are now actual sisters. Many cool new things in the story, and even what they do with the villain in the story was something I was not expecting. I do have some small issues with it, but I think it's really cool. And that final chapter, I don't want to say anything, but my god. Also, I feel more recently Mortal Kombat games have had some forgettable music, but Mortal Kombat 1 soundtrack is pretty decent. There still really isn't anything that I see myself humming, but it sounds like they at least tried. I also want to touch on the modes. Obviously, there is the main fighting mode, and returning is Towers mode. It's the series' arcade mode, and it's cool if a little repetitive, but the endings for each character is what you go there for, and even provides some answers to questions we had going in. But one surprise to me was Invasion mode. This is a replacement of the Crypt, which I noticed many people were a little upset about, that this Mario Party clone looking ass mode replaced a mode that's been in multiple games, but honestly, I kind of like Invasion better than the Crypt. This is basically a mode where there are many different locations and you travel around them like a board game, and there are many different kinds of fights you do. It's really cool and a cool way to unlock many cosmetics. As for other things, while I do prefer the intro dialogues from Mortal Kombat 11, the intro dialogues in Mortal Kombat 1 I think are really cool. And last but certainly not least, the fatalities. Mortal Kombat 1 of course has fatalities, and they are as gruesome as ever, and some of them honestly are some of the most absurd fatalities we've seen. Now onto the mix. These are some things that I think I can go either way on, or they are more issues that surround the game rather than issues that directly are a fault of the game. For one, the file size and the update. Mortal Kombat 1 obviously takes up a lot of space, but what I don't like is how it tells you the game is ready to be played, only for most of the game to not even be installed. And then sometimes the servers will be down, and when that happens, you can't play certain characters or modes. That's honestly just annoying, and I get that the game has to do that because it's big, but it doesn't mean I like it. I'm not against having to unlock cosmetics and having that be a grind, but it's a bit annoying that there is, slight spoiler, Havoc as an unlockable character, and most cameos are also unlockable. Once again, I'm not against having to unlock characters, as that could be fun, but why is Havoc, and only Havoc of all characters, only playable after you finish the story? That just feels weird and random. And as for cameos, since they are a focal part of the gameplay, I wish they weren't unlockable in the same way you unlock cosmetics. I don't have a problem with them being unlockable, but kind of like how you have to grind for cosmetics, you kind of also have to grind for cameos, which is a little weird to me. And lastly, I'm going to get into some slight story spoilers, so if you don't want to know anything, skip to the time on screen. Alright? Okay, here we go. So I love the story mode, and I love Shang Tsung as the villain, but I kind of wish they didn't lock the main villain behind a pre-order paywall. It's weird that I'm complaining about this when I was going to pre-order this game anyways, but I already don't love this practice that NRS does, locking characters behind pre-order paywalls. But if they're going to do this, I wish they didn't do it with a character like Shang Tsung, who is a very important part of the story, being like the main villain, and instead maybe have it be a character who wouldn't have made it into the game otherwise. But while that doesn't bother me as much because, you know, he is available and I could play him, which is why it's only in the mixed category, what does bother me is that the 3 returning DLC characters, Quan Chi, Ermac, and Takeda, are all in the story. Takeda, albeit he makes a blink and you miss it cameo, but Quan Chi and Ermac are important enough to the story where you fight them. Like, they have fully built movesets, so they could have been in the launch roster, but NetherRealm just decided not to. Hell, Quan Chi is like a co-villain. Once again, it's only in the mix because I ultimately don't care that much, and I am going to play them eventually. But it's just a little annoying seeing that these very important characters could have been playable, but they just aren't.
The Great Hall.
Where I'm from, princesses aren't taught blood sports.
What a failure of imagination.
Now, as for the bad, I have some, albeit small, complaints. One is that there is no crossplay, or at least not yet. It's disappointing that I can't play on my PS5 with some of my friends who have this game on Xbox or PC, but they are adding it later, so it's not the biggest deal, but at the same time, I feel like they could have included it at launch. Another thing that kind of bugs me, and this is very minor, you know, it almost sounds like a nitpick, but I want to mention it, and that's while I love the roster and how balanced it is when it comes to representing different eras of Mortal Kombat, and I think it's got a good number of characters, why is there just one blank spot? It looks like NRS intended to include one more character, but just didn't and left the slot there. And lastly, some voice acting just doesn't seem right, specifically Megan Fox as Natara. I think it's cool that they got Megan Fox to voice Natara, but she honestly sounds incredibly bored when delivering dialogue. Similarly, I love that Johnny Cage now has a Jean-Claude Van Damme skin as a nice callback to how Mortal Kombat originally started off as. And I love that they even got Van Damme to do the voice, but he kind of sounds like he's just dozing off at times.
I will reclaim it, Cage.
Got 3 million? It's yours.
You know I don't have it.
I bet you Yakuza pals could come up with it. Oh, that's right. You blew them off. If there's one lesson Hollywood's taught me, it's never burn bridges. You never know who can help.
Mortal Kombat 1 further proves that we are in a resurgence of fighting games. Visually, the game is stunning, the game feels amazing, the playable and cameo roster makes this game perhaps the most stacked Mortal Kombat game, and the story is as engaging as a NetherRealm story has ever been. I do have issues with this game, but really, they are more like nitpicks the more I think about it. So with all that, I'm giving Mortal Kombat 1 a 9 out of 10. Is this my favorite Mortal Kombat game? Well, I feel like it's too early to tell. But come back to me in, I don't know when, but at some point, and it might just be. And that's my review for Mortal Kombat 1. You guys like it, not like it? You guys have the game, not have the game? If you don't have the game, you guys want to play it, not want to play it? Anything about the game, let me know down below. Anyways, be sure to like the video, come subscribe, or I will perform a fatality on you. Bye!